Giving feedback to students using learning intentions and success criteria, not just buzzwords. Hi guys, for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. If you are someone who has been following along or already subscribed, welcome back. I'm so glad you're still with me. I can see the subscribe numbers going up and the thumbs going up and lots of comments coming in. So that's a great way for me to know that people are finding these videos useful, and I've been seeing people sharing the videos as well. I'm very grateful to know that people find them useful to their teaching or at least to share with their colleagues. So I'm glad to have you all here. Tonight, I'm just going to be doing a talking video, so be prepared. It'll go for maybe about 15 minutes, and I'm going to go through a bit of documentation first and what works for me and just my advice on using effective feedback strategies and using learning intentions and success criteria. So whether you're new to it or whether you've been doing it for a while, just keep in mind that these are the strategies that work for me, experiences that I've had or experiences of people that I've worked with. Obviously, it won't be the same in every school or every classroom or for every student, but if you can pick and choose the different things that might work for you, that might work for your kids, then hopefully it's useful for you. Okay, so getting into it. I've got some paperwork here just to help out. So in terms of talking about feedback, if you're part of the New South Wales Department of Education system, if you go to the NESA website, they've got information there and printouts that you can look at. So this one was only a couple of pages, but there's lots out there obviously that you can print out and read through, and that gives some information as well. And I mean, if you go to, here we are, my other one here, sorry. ATSL, so the Australian Institute of Teaching and School Leadership. This is a flyer that was easily printed out with just a broad overview if you're looking at just getting some information, some basics, or if you want to reinforce what you're doing and understand why we've got it. Those are two handouts that are easy you can find. And even if you Google, there's heaps of stuff on Google about effective feedback, about learning intentions and success criteria. If you're willing to spend the time, there's heaps of freebies out there that people have made for themselves. And obviously you just need to interpret whether or not it's going to be useful for you. When we're talking about feedback, obviously, we're talking about quality feedback for our students. And a lot of us in Australia, I know I've got some people from overseas on here, but in Australia, we use a lot of the research from Dr. Hattie. And when he talks about feedback, he's talking about effect sizes that go with feedback. So if you wanted to look at Visible Learning by Dr. Hattie, I've just got it on my phone already for you. This is a list of the things that are predominantly in classrooms being used to help improve student learning. So there's things on there like classroom management, writing programs, inquiry-based teaching, homework, and the effect size that they have on student development. And you've even got levels down here where it goes backwards. So things like retention or television can send them backwards if you're using it to explicitly try and learn and teach. Feedback is all the way up here. It's number 4 on this list up here with an effect size of 0.75. And if I go to my other little picture that I've got prepared, it'll show you where the zone of desired effects is. So I'm just clicking onto it now. It might not come up very clear. Oh no, that might work. So I'm flipping it around. So feedback is up here, right in this desired zone that we want. So these things down here were lower on that scale before. So you've got the typical teacher effects, developmental effects, and then reverse effects. But the blue there is that zone of desired effect. Those are the things that are absolutely imperative to ensuring our kids are successful in the classroom. Visible learning, obviously, student visible learning being at the top of that scale. I'm just going to adjust here. So if I refer back to my the NESA information here, like I said, was on the website there, they're talking about different forms of feedback. So it can be verbal, it can be written. Some people like to do exit slips. The one-to-one I find is always best, but as teachers, we don't always have time to do one-to-one with our students or to do it well or to do it for everything. There is no way we'd be able to do it for every KLA, for every task that we have all throughout the day. So that's why other methods are really beneficial, like student feedback, peer collaboration, using videos, audio materials, so the kids could video and then feedback on themselves or feedback with a peer or feedback with the teacher can watch it later and use it that way, which is also beneficial for students with special needs that might need to take extra time, or if you've got some students that might have selective mutism, that might want a quiet space on their own to just be able to complete a task and do it that way. And you need to decide as well whether you're going to be using whole class assessment, group assessment, individual assessment, and what it is you're giving feedback on. When we're talking about giving feedback, we're obviously not talking about marking an assignment and giving back just a score. I still remember high school, getting the assignment marked, seeing ticks, seeing crosses. We didn't even have the marking rubric really when I was going through. You just got a comment based on how you went. So now obviously we've got marking rubrics and criteria and templates, and we're talking about getting really, really specific. So at the moment I've got a year 2 class, so I'm using very explicit learning intentions and success criteria that target what we're doing in the classroom. And some of them even look like some of these examples I've got here. So what's one I've got on here? The learning intention is we are learning to write a narrative, or we will write a narrative. We're going to write a narrative. And this can be said or written, and it doesn't have to be called a learning intention. It could be called a target or a goal. Really doesn't matter in terms of that language. We know we're setting a specific target there. The success
found on the web.
That's my Google phone starting. I'll turn that off. I just got distracted. Success criteria for learning to write a narrative is the points how you know you've written that narrative and what your focus is for that session. So the success criteria for this one says, set the scene in the opening paragraph, build up tension or suspense, use adjectives and powerful verbs, end with a cliffhanger. 4 success criteria. So you're not looking at spelling, not looking at grammar, not looking at, looking at grammar, sorry, adjectives and verbs, but we're not looking necessarily at their capitals, or if they've put the short date in, or if it doesn't even say anything about a title. Don't even have to have a title on there. It's literally looking for those 4 things. So when that student brings you their work that they've completed, I'm not going to go through and circle every spelling mistake. I'm not going to add a bunch of commas in there. I'm not going to have any conversation whatsoever other than that success criteria. Because if I haven't told the student explicitly to focus on their spelling or to focus on their punctuation, then I shouldn't be expecting it to be in there. And if I'm marking it on that, it's going to detract from the fact that that was what I was looking for. The opening paragraph is what I was looking at. How do I know I've written a narrative? I've got the paragraph, I've got the tension or suspense, I've got my adjectives and verbs, and I've got my cliffhanger. Excellent. You did exactly what I asked you to do, what I expected you to do, and what I said this task was about. If you know your students need to focus on spelling or punctuation, that needs to be the next success criteria. That needs to be the next learning intention, so that when they're working on it, that's their focus, and then that's the feedback you're going to give them. So when they come back to you, if they've made spelling mistakes or punctuation mistakes, you can then have that conversation explicitly about what they need to focus on or how they need to improve. Now, that can go for any subject. I've got some on here for mathematics as well. So if you're in an older class, learning intention, measure and calculate the perimeter of irregular polygons. So the success criteria for that would be measure the length of each side and correctly calculate the total of the measurements to give the perimeter. So it doesn't say that I've had to do neat lines. It doesn't say that I've had to rule a margin in my book or do my date or anything like that. I shouldn't be marking any of that. I shouldn't be putting down where's your title, where's your date, where's this, that, and the other. It's not the focus. The focus of that is the success criteria. If your focus is going to be having all those other things, that needs to be established in a different way. There's no reason I should be having a feedback conversation about something that I didn't establish was the task. Now, in terms of learning intentions and success criteria, this again I still think is a really handy leaflet. It's giving information about why we're using them, where it's most effective, practical techniques that you can use, and it's got on here rubrics, a bump it up wall, work samples, student designed assessment, and things that you can consider. And it's got some case studies written at the bottom there too, which I recommend. The thing that I find most beneficial when you're doing this is that one-to-one conversation that you have. And like I said before, you can't necessarily have time to do that. It's got to be really explicit. And when I'm having that conversation, I like to see if the student can tell me what it's about. So it's not about me necessarily sitting down and directly what they should have done. I'm going to ask questions and gauge a dialogue from it. So if my learning intentions involved writing a solid paragraph and using an introductory sentence and then stretching any information out that I need to for, say, an informative text or informative piece of writing, like about a frog. We're doing frogs at the moment. When I'm having that conversation, I want you to say, you needed to have blah, blah, blah in there. And I'll ask them, so if instead of saying, oh, you should have had scientific words in here, we've written the scientific words on the board, why haven't you used them? I would say to them, what kind of words should we be using in that? And I'll see if they remember scientific words. Because there's no point me saying, you should have used scientific words on there if they're just on what scientific words were. What kind of words should you have been using? Verbs, adjectives, whatever. Okay, let's have a look over here when we were doing these really interesting words over here that came from the text. We called those a special word. Do you remember what they were? And if they still don't get it, that would be the point when you direct. But I'm hoping to gauge out of them if I say, do you remember the kind of words we were going to use? Scientific words. Yes, that's right, scientific words. Let's have a look. Let's see which words in here you think are the scientific words. Oh, there's one. What else do you think we could have used? Get it out of them verbally in that conversation, or get them to point it out, and then that will help them redirect it for when they're either editing or the next phase of writing, wherever they're up to at that point. Okay, I'm trying to avoid getting a bit too scatterbrained on this, so I'm reverting back to some of the notes that I've printed again to remind myself about what I wanted to say. So when you're looking at your learning intentions, they can focus on other things other than skills. So it can focus on knowledge of different things as well. For example, knowledge on a topic or how something is made. And learning intentions that focus on understanding. So when I'm talking about writing, obviously I'm talking about a skill. But when you're talking about understanding, you might be understanding about things like having an understanding that diet can affect your health, or the causes of a historical event. And these are the things that underpin how we transfer their knowledge and their understanding to those skills that they're using, or vice versa as well. And I mean, ultimately, these things are great because they create independent learners. If they can target exactly what they're learning and they know exactly what we expect of them to be successful, then they're able to tackle those tasks and really embed themselves into it while they're doing it. There's no point me setting a writing task where a student is going to sit down and think the whole time, I need to spell, I need to do all of my full stops, I need to do all of my capitals, plus I need to remember to do that work that's on the board, plus I need to remember to try and impress the teacher with my writing, and I need to do all those other things that go with it. If they can look up at the board, I write down the learning intention and success criteria where they're written, oh, I only need to do those 3 things. Cool. Or 2 things. And these things can be differentiated as well. You don't have to have one learning intention and success criteria for the class. It can be difficult to manage if you've got one for every single student. Overall, my students know that they still have goals that they set for themselves that are an overarching goal. So it could be improvement in handwriting, improvement in reading, or focusing on word endings when they read instead of word beginnings. They know that. But those are those things that they also set for themselves and work towards in different ways. And that's a different conversation that I have in my class with the students. So ultimately, we're using all of this stuff so that we can give quality feedback to the kids. And at the end of the day, I love the fact that there's less marking to go with it, because when students bring me their work, or when I'm sitting with students doing that work, I can see it as they're doing it. So, all right, you've got an introductory paragraph, so do you. Good. That's 1 out of the 3 done. And then you get through it. I can see all 3, tick, sign, because I'm not going through and I'm marking spelling, I'm not checking the date, I'm not checking all of that other stuff. I can see those 3 things, tick, sign, done, back in the tray. They feel successful. I know they've reached their goals. and I can still monitor that bookwork. I don't need to have red ticks all over it to be able to monitor and assess and check where they're at in their learning goals. Which also means that those kids that need differentiation, that can be easily done, and they don't have to feel like failures if they haven't achieved all those three things. It just means we as teachers need to monitor that very closely and maybe adapt what we're doing next with them. Okay, so I think I might have rambled on enough for that one tonight. There's no way I could cover everything about feedback or learning intentions or success criteria in one video. That's just a bit of my overview and how I feel about it. If you're a bit apprehensive at using this information, I recommend going to the site, talking with your colleagues, seeing if they're doing it. And seriously, if you just Google effective feedback, or if you Google learning intentions and success criteria, there's tons of stuff out there. Lots of templates, lots of things that you can stick up in your classroom, lots of prompts like this one. I'm in New South Wales, so we use the literacy and numeracy continuum, and I'm doing the L3 training. So I'm using L3 in my classroom as a school program. And when I Googled literacy continuum, learning intentions and success criteria, there's teachers out there that have already typed their own. And it's not necessarily me taking someone else's work and then just dumping it that way. I take it and I go, some of these give me ideas. Some of these already will work for some of my kids. Some of these might work for the kids in the class next door. Adapt and modify. And that's why I love being part of this profession, because we're all sharers. Sharing is caring. We all love to be able to share what we've done and make sure we're not reinventing the wheel too much. And it's good to know that we've got that consistent teacher judgment across the board as well. We kind of understand that in my classroom and in someone else's classroom, those are the things that we're looking for at around that age or around that grade. So we're not too far off base, and we all differentiate and modify depending on the class we have and our kids and how they learn best. Remember, it all comes down to your kids. You know your kids best. You need to target their needs and make sure that you're doing what you can to make them feel good about their learning, that they know they can be successful, and that we are setting them up to be great learners. Okay, if you liked that, give me the thumbs up. It's much appreciated. I hope to see you in the next video. If you're new and you've stayed till the end, I appreciate that very much as well. And what I'll do is I'll link my button down the bottom here if you want to subscribe, and I'll link one of my other videos up the top there. Everyone seems to be enjoying the must-do, can-do videos, so I'll link one of those up the top here for you today, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.